How to measure donor relations. Hi, I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz. This is the first day from the fundraising school, and I'm joined today by Angela Altamore. Angela is an associate vice president at BWF, a national and international consulting firm, and she is active in helping nonprofits understand donor relations. And Angela, what a delight to have you with us on the Fundraising Schools podcast.
Thanks so much, Bill. I'm thrilled to be here.
Now, you have a wide range of experience, but you also like to hone in on this issue of donor relations, donor stewardship, so much so that they might not necessarily even mean the same thing. So, we're in a university. We love to start with definitions. Help us understand exactly what you're talking about in this area of donor relations.
Absolutely. I think the clear terminology is certainly fundamental to set the stage. And I think you're right. When you think about donor relations and stewardship, they often get intermixed and thrown around interchangeably. And then you throw in the newest area, the donor experience, and it can confuse things and muddy the waters even more. So when I'm working with clients and talking to folks, I really like to talk about building a house. And when you build a house, you need three key things. So you think about the blueprint that you need first. That's how I would describe donor relations. It's really thinking about the overall relationship that the donor has with your organization from the 30,000 foot level, from their first interactions before they even decide to become a donor, and then all the way along that journey through hopefully the conclusion through some sort of plan giving or whatever that might look like towards the end. And that entire perspective is really where we think about donor relations. Stewardship, on the other hand, is oftentimes, I think, where people focus, and that's certainly fundamental. I would say that that's the foundation of your house. That's things like your acknowledgement letters in a timely fashion. It's sharing the impact that the gift has, talking about recognizing things properly. So I really think about that as the fundamentals. Those things have to be in place as that solid foundation. And the easiest way to differentiate the two in my mind is that you steward the gift, but you build the relationship long-term with the donor. So thinking about that sort of helps clarify that a little bit. And then donor experience, I would say, is really thinking about those finishing touches that turn the house into the home. So really thinking about how can you elevate, how can you set yourself apart? Are you moving from Formica countertops to granite countertops, or hardwood floors versus vinyl floors? Really thinking about how can you set that tone? And that happens over the course of that donor's lifetime. It's not just one touch point. It's those things that layer and layer and layer on top of that.
So, Angela, I'm going to infer something from your reply, which may or may not be accurate. And that is the reason you're able to spend so much time on this with such great distinction between donor relations, donor stewardship, and donor experience. And I love how you segregate those three and bring great precision to each of those three, is maybe you're not seeing as much of this as you would hope to see initially as BWF works with your wonderful clients who are fantastic nonprofit organizations. But the fact that you've spent so much time thinking about this would seem to reveal there's a lot of work to be done in our sector to improve these areas. Is that correct?
Yes, I've certainly seen it change. As I started as a practitioner, my focus initially where I worked was really on the actual gifts itself, thinking about how we were stewarding, how fast could we get our letters out the door say thank you? How fast were we creating those impact reports and those endowment messages to go out and talk about that? And I think as the profession has progressed, we've certainly seen that focus expand beyond that. And I think as I'm working with clients, I'm seeing them in that same sort of transitional phase, moving from focusing just on the gift to realizing and there's value in the long-term focus and that big picture focus on that holistic donor relations profession. I think some of it also is that we're seeing as a career path, donor relations practitioners are staying in the field longer than we're seeing some of the frontline fundraisers and development officers stay there. They're staying in their organizations longer. So they carry that breadth of history if they're given the opportunity to dive in and explore entire relationships with donors at a deeper level. That carries on that continuity, which can provide for a better experience with your donors as your development officers sort of ebb and flow through your organizations. So there's definitely a need for it. And I think that recognized value, the bigger value we place on donor retention, then that the value of donor relations becomes more and more evident.
We know that we're always looking to recruit new donors. And yet, the best situation for a nonprofit is to develop a long-term relationship with our donors over time. It's just honoring them with human dignity. It's just the morally right thing to do as they're giving us these financial gifts. But then also it can lead to higher gifts over time. And it's also the least expensive way to do fundraising, to maintain relationships with donors. And Angela, again, I kind of want to just stay in the climate of fundraising for a moment. When you talk about the importance of donor relations, and especially if a nonprofit can have a donor relations professional, not all of them have that resource, but the ones that do, our frontline fundraisers, they have so much demand on them to meet your goals, meet your metrics, get the gift and go on to the next donor. Are you seeing that in our field? Does that create greater emphasis on the need for donor relations, donor stewardship, donor experience? And how does that donor relations professional come in to walk alongside the fundraiser who, again, feels this pressure to move on to the next donor after receiving the gift?
Absolutely. So I think that we are seeing a great need for it. I don't think that it's being taken as seriously as it should be. So I think there's lots of opportunity there. And I think there more and more I'm working with clients and hearing that there's an interest in that. I think that by creating a trust between the donor relations individual or team, if you've got one, or even people that are doing donor relations-esque work, if you don't have an individual team, I would guess that the work is still happening in some capacity. So creating a trust between the development officers and those donor relations professionals is absolutely essential. I think there's two key ways that I would recommend doing that. The first is creating shared metrics. Think about the metrics that the development officers already likely have in place or in place at your organizations, whether it's the overall fundraising goal, retention goals, average gift size, first-time donor rates, any of those sorts of things can be applied to the donor relations efforts and work to be able to have it measured in the same way. And if you create that shared goal and that common language between the two areas, you're going to strengthen those partnerships. And not only is that better internally for your organizations, but man, when that happens, donors can see it. They can sense it when they're maybe interacting with the donor relations professionals in whether it's through events or through phone calls or conversations. It gives them another touch point at your organization that they can rely on besides just their development officer. So it's moving from that sort of territorial sort of siloed relationship and thinking about it holistically. I think beyond metrics, the second area that I would recommend is really thinking about the training that each of the areas go through and bringing development officers through some sort of streamlined donor relations training so that they understand what your DR team is trying to do and how they're helping you and how they're going to enhance and make your life easier. Again, goes to building that trust. And I think the opposite needs to be true. Thinking about what sort of experience and background and training are you providing for your donor relations team to understand what the work is like to be a fundraiser, because it's not easy. I started in that career early on, and I did it for a year and a half, 2 years, and I understand that it is a hard gig, but to be able to express that and have your donor relations team understand that at a deeper level really, really can help strengthen that relationship.
Angela, I'd like to ask you for a next level of precision. You wonderfully defined, the differences between donor relations, donor stewardship, donor experience. What exactly are you referring to when you talk about a donor relations professional and a donor relations team separate from the frontline fundraisers? Are these the people who are owning the donor relationship management software and getting all the information in and preparing the fundraiser for the meeting? Are there other responsibilities? Help our audience please understand at a little more precise level what you're referring to.
Absolutely. So I think it can be a little bit different in every shop, and certainly the more complex the organization is, the more layers and levels there are there. But I'd say at the core, they're the folks that are in charge of the thanking and making sure that those initial touch points, once the gift comes in, happens. Certainly working with, in a perfect world, I'd like to see them work with the development officers and the prospect research team to think about portfolio management and being at the table for some of those conversations. I don't think that's common yet, but I highly recommend that because they have the ability to look at those conversations. And if a needle isn't moving where it needs to on a donor, those professionals can look at that and offer different perspectives or different insights on how to continue to maybe build that relationship instead of just moving them out of the portfolio, which oftentimes tends to be the case. So I think they can be utilized more in that way. And I think also being part of the process for helping with proposal development can certainly be helpful if they've got that long-term connection and know some of the history with the donor, maybe more so than some of the other professionals. Using him in that way to bring that insight and background can help create a deeper proposal that's more likely to be accepted. And then that makes the follow-up where they're involved in the impact reporting and that long-term storytelling after the gift happens, and is realized that ability to talk about the success of that and what it's done a year down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road is certainly a big component of that. And then I think the other common area that most folks are probably used to seeing is involved in the donor recognition. So if there's naming involved, being involved in naming agreements and gift documentation that goes along with that, and then the actual installation of recognition and the processes and things that are involved on that side as well.
You're bringing us so much good wisdom and understanding of the donor relation professional work. And you mentioned the need for metrics that can help us be very specific around this. I wonder if we can bring this to life here a little bit. So let's say Bill is the donor. All right. And so I've been cultivated by the fundraiser, and that took a little while. Now Bill has made his gift, and I received that initial thank you from the fundraiser, maybe even from the fundraiser's CEO. Mm-hmm. Help me understand now the journey of the relationship with Bill from the donor relations professional's perspective as you're thinking about these metrics to help us really be specific about this work.
Yep. So I would want to take a look at the next 1 to 5 years of what we envision the potential for that relationship to look like. Understanding from a development officer, we know that Bill's next gift, he's expressed an interest in this particular area. So that's where we're going to continue to work with him on. So then as a donor relations practitioner, I would want to identify, okay, what are the touch points along the way that can help sort of set that stage and set the table for that next ask down the road? So it's sort of like the appetizer, right? How are we, are there events happening in that area that we can invite you to? Is there a special guest speaker that's maybe coming to campus that's going to speak about a topic in that particular department or program that we know you're interested in? So continuing to engage you in that way. Or maybe you could be a speaker yourself and we can engage you in that particular fashion. Or perhaps you have a business area that might align, that we might be able to draw on your expertise to learn from. If I'm a smaller organization, that's a lovely way to continue to deepen that relationship, involve them, have them volunteer in some ways. Is there a mentor opportunity that we can connect you with somebody, a client or a student that we engage with? How are we keeping you engaged and keeping you involved so that what you don't feel as a donor is the next time my organization reaches out to me is when they want money? That's the last thing that we want. So it's about identifying those other touch points and not only engagements and experiences, but then also thinking about, okay, if we're going to go in a year from now and make a gift or make an ask, we need to make sure that 9 months from now, we're talking about the impact that last gift had, right? So helping you understand as a donor, this is what my last gift has accomplished and all these things. Because if you feel good about that, when my development officer comes to see you in a year, you're going to be more likely to be ready for that conversation.
So 2 reactions. Angela, your nonprofit cares about me so much. This isn't a transactional relationship. All those things that you described. Oh, I feel so special. Thank you for that. Getting back then to your definitions, what I heard was the blueprint, donor relations. What I heard was donor experience. I'm going to be asked to speak. I might mentor. Can my company help? These kinds of things. How are those different? Where does the donor stewardship come in? Help me see that piece. And in that story, what was donor stewardship?
So making sure that you get the gift in a timely fashion or the acknowledgement in a timely fashion. And then certainly that impact storytelling, right? That impact reporting, that we're making sure we know what the last gift was. And not only maybe the last gift, the last several gifts. So maybe it's, let's look at the last 20 years of giving and do a comprehensive focus on all of the things that have happened to remind you just how deep your relationship goes back with the organization. So really that impact and helping express at a deeper level, helping the donor understand just how valuable we find their relationship beyond the monetary side of it. But really these are the things that were able to be accomplished because you partnered with us.
And Angela, to kind of conclude here with the why, fundraising is not transactional. It's not just about let's get the gift, we have that exchange, or done. In philanthropy, we all have similar philanthropic motivations and values around the same cause of this particular nonprofit organization. We are people who care about the same or similar things. And so again, along with just being the morally right thing to do, it allows us to work with others who we know, who care about the same things that we do. And that's transformational, not transactional. And that leads to exponential impact, not just the individual impact that one person can make. That's why we do this.
100%. And I think that it's creating that sense of community, right? If you create a community of your donors and draw them together, and if you do that at a deep level, not only is it beneficial for your organization, but it helps them remind one another why we do this. It's the power of the collective community.
That is so well said. Angela Altamore, Associate Vice President, specializing in these areas of donor relations, donor stewardship, donor experience as a leader for BWF, national consulting firm in the philanthropic sector. Angela, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and expertise with us here on the Fundraising School's First Day podcast.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.
And donor stewardship is something we are doing more and more of our curriculum as we update our curriculum. Our Associate Director of Curriculum Design, Dustin Donovan, has been leading that process for us to make sure we're teaching this even more in all of our courses, everything from principles and techniques, kind of the front door, the signature course, to our new planned gift management certificate and our planned giving courses and everything else in between. We have 25 courses in all. They lead to 5 certificates. We're in person in 10 U.S. cities, and of course online, either recorded or live, anywhere around the world. We also have custom training. We can bring a course to you. We can bring parts of courses and knit them together just for your nonprofit, your association, your region. We have quarterly webinars, these weekly podcasts, all of our knowledge gathered in our textbook, Achieving Excellence in Fundraising, the book now out in its 5th edition. Where do you find all of this? Online at go.iu.edu/TFRS for the Fundraising School. So grateful for my colleagues, Mike Anthony, the Emmy Award-winning producer, as well as my colleague, Dustin Donovan. I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz, and now you are now more fully informed on this first day from the Fundraising School.